the Vedas have been considered to be as old as about 6,000 plus years. In the Vedas, there are also crossing overs. So they would talk about prana, and prana means a life force. And prana is the air that we breathe, but it's also the food that we eat. It's also the thoughts that we create in our mind. So understanding what is prana, what is that life force, and how can we increase that in our bodies. But if we have to be very honest, if we look at the pharmaceutical approach to health, it's symptomatic treatment. You have something that appears and they see that and then they treat that. But they don't look at what was the cause behind it.
The Vedas are literature from ancient India, and they help explain how to live your life, how to manage your family, finances, and a whole range of things. To cover this very interesting topic, I've got Kushal Chetty, who's actually studied the Vedas and practiced in the wellness industry for over a decade. Kushal, welcome to the show.
Hi, Deepak. Nice to be here with you. Thank you for having me on.
Kushal, we are very interested about the Vedic literature. So
Mm.
tell us how you got into Vedic literature and how you use it in aspects of your life.
So, for me, the Vedas have been something I've been exposed to at a young age. Family background I come from, um, my gran would follow a lot of the Ayurvedic cures when we were feeling ill as kids, and she would treat everything out of the kitchen basically, using different herbs and spices, and so it was quite fascinating, and I took it as normal growing up. And then I realized, we actually weren't going to the doctors as much as the other kids. And I realized that my gran was a bit of a healer herself. At the age of 12, I was fortunate. I was sponsored to go to a school on Vedic literature in India, and I stayed in a place called Mayapur, and that is in the West Bengal, not far from Calcutta. So I lived in this school, and it was built according to Vedic construction. So they use a lot of thatch and bamboo, very all natural materials, and so it was, you know, in itself quite an experience to live in that surrounding for those years I was there. And in the school, they taught us further around the Vedic literature. And for those that aren't familiar with the Vedas, so the Vedas have been considered to be as old as about 6,000 plus years, um, where they first can see that there was a form of recording it. And before that, they say that the Vedas are an oral tradition that have existed from time immemorial. Things like the Akashic records, which people may have come across, which is an understanding that all this information exists on the planet on a certain plane, and we have the ability to raise our consciousness so we can access the information when we need it. Understanding the Vedas itself is there are many different, it's almost like works, collections in the Vedas, and some of them are, um, like you have the Rig Veda, the Sama Veda, and various others. I think there are four. In these Vedas, there are subcategories, and some Vedas would talk more about, let's say, the Ayurveda. The Ayurveda means, Ayur means life, and Veda means science. So when you understand that's the science of life, in the Ayurveda, it's designed around looking at the constitution of the individual, which is based on the five elements. So you have your earth, water, fire, air, and your ether or space. And just in the same way we are constructed, we have all these elements within our body to various degrees. And the individuals that we are, some may have more fire, some may have more water, some may have a combination of different ones. So there's the individual, what they call the like prakriti or the makeup of the person. So the Ayurveda works in that realm, and based on that, um, we start understanding what is that person's needs. When they are healthy, what are their needs? When they are ill, what are their needs? And what can support them uh, to have a healthy, um, active, vibrant body physically. And then in the Vedas there are also crossing overs. So they would talk about prana, and prana means a life force. And prana is the air that we breathe, but it's also the food that we eat. It's also the thoughts that we create in our mind. You know, what gives us energy, what takes our energy. So understanding what is prana, what is that life force, and how can we increase that in our bodies, um, which when our body is healthy, then our mind is healthy, and our emotional state is healthy. And then we are at a plane at which we can go further in our exploration of life. And that's where the spiritual aspect of the Vedas comes in. So the Vedas teaches us how to live within the world, how to live within societies, how to live within our bodies. And then it also teaches us that there is that which is beyond the world, or a spiritual connection or identity that we have. And how can we reconnect with that? And that's when practices like yoga start coming in. So yoga in today's modern world, it's very similar to stretches or like a Pilates class or things like that. But the deeper understanding of yoga is it's not merely the poses that one does or the exercises, but it's the breath work one does, it is the mindset, the diet, the mentality. So to be a yogi is someone who commits their life on that path, and in every situation they are engaging from a an understanding coming from yoga, which is again about unity, about, about a oneness, basically a connection with things. So this is what the Vedas are ultimately designed to do: is to elevate the consciousness on the planet, radiated in a way that people on different levels can access it according to their needs. And once they access it, it starts to elevate it. So if it's just about illness in the body, how do I heal this illness that I'm struggling with, this disease? Then the Veda has a solution. And when one practices that, it changes the way we engage in the world, and then it changes our health state. And when we feeling healthy again and in balance, then it's also the consciousness that seems to expand.
Kushal, this is really fascinating because I've heard of Ayurveda. Obviously, it's very well known around the world. And I've come across it when I've been studying homeopathy because there seems to be some similarities in treatment remedies between Ayurveda and homeopathy because they use a lot of plant medicine. And you've now said there's a whole bunch of other Vedas. You know, Ayurveda, I guess, is popular now because there's a lot of illness and disease, and people aren't eating the right foods. And that's why Ayurveda is very relevant at the moment. But as people get healthier, then the other Vedas are going to become more relevant. But this is literature from thousands and thousands of years ago. So it's really fascinating that it's still relevant even in today's world. So I wanted to ask a question about Ayurveda. I have some arguments that people say Ayurveda is 6,000 years old and they've made zero progress in 6,000 years. And look at the current medical system. You know, in 100 years, they've made so much progress, and you can scan people and you can see inside their bodies and you can do all these things, and there's better cancer treatments and all of that. What is your response to that type of comment?
Yes, we both aspects are looking at creating wellness and creating health in the individual. But if we have to be very honest, if we look at the pharmaceutical approach to health, it's symptomatic treatment. You have something that appears and they see that and then they treat that. But they don't look at what was the cause behind it. So something that could be showing up in your body gets treated and then it gets suppressed. But at a later point, when you're stressed, it comes back again. Then you need to treat it again. And this kind of continues. And eventually you build up a tolerance to the medication, and then you need to get on stronger medication. We also have access to healthy ways of living, through the Vedic understanding. Our diet, our stress levels, um, how we gather this pran within our body again. And I think also looking back, a lot of the diseases that we are dealing with today weren't so commonplace back then. So how can we really say we've progressed in terms of health? It almost seems like we're in a more sick society today, where people were much hardier back then, work in the field and, do very kind of manual, hard work, and they weren't suffering as much from spinal degeneration, spinal stenosis, all the things that people are coming up and saying. I also work as a massage therapist, and with a lot of my clients, this has become quite common, and the effects of stress. So I feel that it might appear that we've made so much progress that we can see within the body, that we can diagnose this, that we can start seeing all these things and do transplants, remove someone's ill organs. And these things are amazing. But I do feel that how we touched on earlier, the relevance, or how people can still access something that's been around for so long and it can still find relevance. And also seeing how in science there is now more correlation, especially homeopathies, and what they call functional medicine. And, so there's understanding that we're talking about gut health. In the Ayurveda, it says um, that the father of all disease is indigestion. So this is an ancient statement. And today we are starting to see, everyone is focusing on gut health. Because if we get the gut right, we solve so many of the other problems. And we are in a very strange time, a different world than when the Vedas, maybe people had more direct access to that knowledge. So how, even on my journey, how do we adapt while still honoring the knowledge that has been there and being able to access it and utilize it in a world at which maybe some of that is very foreign. There's very different challenges we're faced with. When there is truth will resonate in different perspectives. My perspective, I say it's daytime, and you realize it from your side that it's daytime from your own space where you are sitting. So because there's a resonance between us, we can agree. There's a truth, a commonality. So the truth should be the commonality. And when something is true and helpful, we see it reflected in different modalities or approaches.
Ayurveda is so relevant because, like you said, it deals with health. And I know from my studies that cancer, for example, didn't really exist 200 years ago. Like it's only 100-year-old illness. And we've seen, like, I don't know, in the 70s or something, the cancer graph just going through the roof.
Mm.
And now cancer is very prevalent. I think it's such a state now that almost all people who die from old age are dying from some sort of cancer or terminal illness related
Yeah.
thing. And then I remember in the 90s, they were talking about diabetes being the fastest growing illness
Mm.
in the 90s. And I think that was because of all this sugar and processed
Mm.
stuff that was coming into people's diets. And
Mm.
now you can see so many people are diabetic. And in today, the most fastest growing illness is actually mental illness, which makes perfect sense because everyone is sitting on their phones, technology, computer, disconnected from families, disconnected from each other. And that probably causes some mental issues because you've lost that mental connection that you had with other people. Does the Ayurveda discuss these things and explain how to live life in such a, with all these sort of challenges that people are exposed to?
That's that's a really great observation of how the illnesses we've been challenged with over the time, and what we're facing today. I would say that again, it's perspective, and with the Ayurveda, there's a lot of interpretation. So in the Vedas, things are almost cloaked. It's a study. It's a process. That's why you have Ayurvedic doctors and you have specialists in different fields because they all are a study. So in the Vedas, it does talk about this, but it doesn't talk about it as directly, and maybe it would be harder for people to access it and see it like that. Someone I'd like to mention, because I think his work is just phenomenal, is a speaker called Gabo Mate, Dr. Gabo Mate, and he talks a lot about living in a toxic culture, in terms of being separated from what is sustainable and feeds us as a human species, and the disconnect we have. And we see that people are suffering with loneliness today. Their trauma has become a big talking point today. And then we talk about, we have individual traumas, but then we also have family traumas, and we have generational, let's say, yeah, generational impact of trauma, and societal and things like this. Genetic marker for something isn't a guarantee you're going to get it. And other people who don't have that marker can very likely get it as well. And if you have a marker, maybe your chances of getting it seems higher, but that genetic response gets activated. So your genetic marker for diabetes would become activated when you are in a certain very stressful environment. And then suddenly that acts up in your body. And an interesting point he also makes is that genetic marker, or the predisposition, can also be deactivated when we are in a healthy state of consciousness. Our body reflects that. And when we are under a lot of stress, our body reflects that. So we cannot merely just try and heal the body without going to the root cause of it. In the Vedic literature, they talk about karma. And in karma, there's also this kind of repetition of certain things that keep going on. It's a cycle, right? So how to break that cycle, breaking those loops. And I see that again with, how do we deal with generational trauma? How do we break that cycle? So I see those correlations, and I see that, yes, the Vedas can be helpful in addressing mental illness, because breath work is one of the key things when people are traumatized, bring themselves into a sense of being centered in themselves and being present in the moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think in my case, I haven't had any pharmaceutical medicines for about 15 years. I haven't been to the doctor in
Wow.
15 years. I've just been, I mean, it's not saying I haven't been sick. I get sick maybe once or twice every year, but it's just like a flu, takes a week and I'm back to health again.
Wow.
And I think this is something that the whole world can actually become because it's just a lifestyle thing, right? It's just really putting the right food into your system, and then your body just works much better.
Hmm.
But Kushal, I wanted to touch on your practice because you've got a very special massage practice. So how do you bring the Vedas into your practice?
Hmm.
Guys, I'm just before Kushal answers, I am going to leave his details below the video so you can find his social media, you can get in contact with Kushal, and you can learn more about his service offering. But Kushal, on to you about your practice and how you bring the Vedas into it.
I found myself working in the world of wellness. Very organically did I kind of get into that position. I was challenged visually growing up, so in my early 20s, I basically was visually impaired. And when that happened, I realized that I couldn't engage in the visual world, in the very kind of sighted world. The way I could engage was through my sense of touch. So if I couldn't see what that object was, if I touched it, I would know what it is. So that led me into exploring acupressure and massage, and I got involved in Thai massage because I like the history behind it, and the understanding of the meridians and the energy lines in the body, and that correlated with the Vedic understandings as well, which is their nadis or energy lines, their chakra points. So seeing something through different eyes, um, and I think I've been in my journey. I feel blessed to have the ability to access that information and then see through those eyes. And I think also the loss of vision helped me become more intuitive in certain ways. And so that intuition, coupled with the exposure to this Vedic knowledge, helped me bring something different to the clients that I was seeing. People started feeling that they were getting more long-term relief. That it wasn't merely just a surface type of treatment they were receiving. So I started working with individuals, and in that I started following that intuition. There's this massage is usually set up like Thai is very structured, where you start, which is the next step, the next step, the next, and you do it through that, and it's very good in a general release and opening of the body. But at the same time, my intuition was telling me that different people had different needs and different levels of flexibility and different areas of pain. And how could I maximize the time I had with them to release what was really their their pain, their tension. And then I started to follow my intuition, which and I developed my own technique of massage. And then I started to bring in more of the Ayurvedic understandings and talk to people, because through talking, through sharing of knowledge, we can gain different tools to approach things. And that they found very helpful. Um, and then later on, I studied Ayurvedic massage, which is where you use certain fortified oils for the body. And again, you look at each person's constitution and what oil would work with them. And through that and through working in different motions, you create the free flow of this prana in the body. And it's also a very detoxifying treatment. And then I started to step forward into corporate wellness, and I saw there was a great need, because that's an area where people are highly stressed. You know, there's a lot of pressure, and they spend a long part of their day in those offices. So that again, bringing that into a corporate environment, I start to see that there are so many different options that can assist these people. So yeah, so I won't say it's the full Ayurvedic offerings in terms of how they do it in India, which is they do the panchakarma and they do the detox, and it's really you have to book yourself into a almost like a retreat hospital and go through the whole process. This is more an adaptation, working with massage, working with my own understanding and intuition, and working with what the environment allows for.
Kushal, that was so amazing. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of our show, and you have given us so much information. Maybe in a future episode, we delve deeper into the actual massages and explain those, because I love the explanation about the meridians and the energy channels that the body has that transports subtle force, or what you call prana, life force energy throughout the body, and your massage and application of the Vedas helping people to make that energy flow more easily. It's really fascinating. I hope our viewers will enjoy it. Kushal, thank you so much, and we look forward to chatting again in the future.
Thank you, Deepak. It was a pleasure being here.